Hi, I'm Kim Master Martino from Line Design, and this is a little stencil that is used for free motion quilting. And so someone had this on Facebook and was wondering how to do the continuous line. And so I thought I'd just pull up my iPad and take a look at it. It's a simple continuous line with going around a loop, crossing over, coming up into the vein of the leaf, back onto the vein, and around the leaf again. We start each leaf with the vein and come back. And as you see, it's not exactly tracing the stencil, but it gives an approximate, and once it's finished, it will have a little bit of my style on it. It's almost better to have some smoothness than to get it exactly on the line. So it goes around the loop, crosses over, up the vein, back down the vein, and then around each of the leaves. The only time it really crosses back on itself is when the thread will go up into the vein and back on. And it's not even so important that it's actually one line. Some veins look nice when they're a little bit thicker. And so it can be either one simple line or coming back and putting it with that a little bit more of a double traced line. Once it's finished, you won't be able to tell if it went over or under the thing. And so we've got a beautiful wreath when it's finished for a block or part of a quilt. So I encourage you to try it. I would use my line designer to do some extra practice. I would first start by tracing the pattern, and I've simply printed it out and put it under some plastic. And this is really to get my pattern into my mind. So this is what I would be looking for as I'm sewing, and the direction I would go and the movement that I would take it. Doing one continuous line for the whole wreath. Once I've done that a few times and I know that I have it in my head, I have that pattern in my head, I would use my line designer and use the same template and start in a place. Doesn't really matter where it started, as long as it's going to be a continuous line. And I'm going to now get this pattern into my hands. So I'm simply using the line designer as it would be for a sit-down machine, and I'm getting that pattern into my head. So even if I am going to draw or place this pattern using a stencil, I'm going to get the feel of the pattern and not worry so much about tracing every single line. It will take on your style, your shape, and as you can see, it's not necessarily tracing exactly, but it's getting the idea of the types of curves, where I have to move my hands, how much space I might need. Again, and I would print this out about the size that I would be stitching, but it gets me into the flow knowing that I'm going to go from a leaf to a leaf to a stem, come back over that stem, sometimes a little bit more slowly, and then I'm going to try to manage my speed so that my flow is fairly continuous. So this helps me get the pattern into my head. It also helps me to practice my speed and where I might need to stop for a minute to move my hands in order to think about where I'm going next. It also helps me try to get some smooth lines so that when I'm stitching, they'll be more consecutive and even. And what I'm trying to do is think about my speed here, especially as I go around corners and what that might look like. Sometimes around the circle, I might slow it down a bit, but not too much, or else the stitching changes. And then it will come back to where I've begun. And the benefit of the line designer is that I now have an idea of the shape that I'm going to work on. You can see it a little bit behind there. Even if I'm going to draw it on my quilt, my hand will be in a better way. And this is another pattern, and I will put the websites where I found them in the links below. And so this is similar to the one that I just did, only it's got a couple of leaves and it's got this nice curly cue in the middle that traces back. It's more, a little bit more free flowing, and it might be helpful if we are working on a line of something or a corner instead of necessarily a block. And you can see here how it's just quickly done. Sometimes it's not exactly covering itself, especially in the spine in the middle. And then the circle doesn't cross over this time, but rather goes around and then back again. So it gets my hands into a place where it will go around and back again. And the same with the spine, goes up, doesn't really trace upon itself. It kind of goes double back. And then it has some nice curves in here, these C shapes, kind of a straight line, and then a big curve shape or a swirl that comes back on itself. And then to get to the next leaf, it would be this S shape. And so by tracing it first, getting it into our head, we can then use the line designer to get it into our hands. We're not wasting a lot of fabric. And then I would probably give it a go on a sample piece first to get that pattern now into my feet, my pedal for the speed. And then in the end, I have this pattern in my heart.